Welcome to this edition of On Point with Karthike, and today I'm joined by Yashovardhan Azad, who served as Secretary, Security and Cabinet Secretariat, had a long tenure in Madhya Pradesh in policing, served in Intelligence Bureau, and retired from Government of India as Information Commissioner. But his, I would say, main expertise lies in security and intelligence. So thank you very much for making time for TV9 Digital. And let me begin this interview straight away by asking you, Kabul blast will have its own consequences. The indications were clear after CIA director had a meeting in Afghanistan. Now, can you please take us through that? How will it impact the region? And what does it tell us about the Taliban regime, which is now in control of the country?
Let me say that the Kabul blast has very ominous portents for the future, not only for the region, but also at the international level. My first point is that, this will reignite the debate again about America's hasty withdrawal, which has actually led to this mayhem. And America actually legitimized the Taliban by the Doha talks, and it gave a guerrilla army which had no sanction, which was financing its operations through the opium growing, and also by a state, a deep state from the back by the ISI. And therefore, this led to a destabilization of the entire region. And after that, once they fixed a date without fixing any kind of an infrastructure, without stating any kind of the entire artifice as to how it's going to be ruled further, and without the talks making any progress, this is actually a result of that. Secondly, this will ignite another huge debate within the country itself, United States of America. Killing of 13 Marines just standing there at the airport and not in combat is a huge, huge issue. And it will really reveal how much of mistake Biden has made in this. Third point, I come to Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, the most serious issue is how much is Taliban in control?
Yes.
This has happened at airport. This has happened at the Abbey Gate, which is directly in control of the Taliban fighters. Mind you, there is no government in Afghanistan even now. The question is, the ISKP, like there are so many other terrorist outfits, has asserted itself basically. And there is daggers drawn between the two groups, Taliban combined, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Haqqani versus the ISKP. And just a few days back, while they were releasing the prisoners in Kabul, they killed ISKP prisoner. So here the battle lines are very clearly drawn. The issue is that, ISKP is from the eastern province of Nangarhar. And some people say there are 1,500 or 2,000 fighters. But the issue is not that. The issue is how much of bombings they can do on their own. They had killed 80 schoolgirls in that attack on school in Kabul. It's the most violent and extremist group. So my third point is, this will kind of lead to the various other terrorist groups, even Jaish-e-Mohammed fighters who are fighting along in 10,000 numbers, that they will ask for a pound of flesh and they would also like to do things on their own. How much it will impact us, we'll see later. The fourth point is that the Afghan political system is absolutely in a flux. Even after so many days, 16 days or 17 days, there's no government. And this will really stir up efforts to put together some kind of a system which will guide their fighters. And my last point is very serious. The neighbors who have so-called reposed faith in the Taliban, whether it's China, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's the North Caucasus region of Russia, they'll be worried, as if the independent terrorist groups start creating trouble in their areas, then it'll have very serious consequences.
So, Mr. Azad, are you saying that Taliban is not one thing? Now, it is a bundle of things. You have this ISIS element, you have Haqqani network element, you have a lot of elements from Gilzai tribe where the Taliban comes from. You have an LET element, you have a Jaish element, then you have those northern Ismaili Hazaras element. What do we make of it then?
Well, so far, it's a Pashtun-dominated setup. And there have been others who are fighting, but the causes have been different. For example, the ISKP was rapidly against the talks. They said Doha talks in air-conditioned atmosphere is not the right way to go about it. So any kind of agreement they were against, though they were fighting the same Americans. So similarly, the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Taiba elements would like to, they would like to open another theaters of war. What is their role going to be there? That is another thing which has to be sorted out. Similarly, others, Uyghurs and the other people. So I think that is something that kind of realignment and positioning will go on once they, sort of establish themselves more into power and have some kind of an hierarchy.
But Mr. Azad, it has a direct bearing on the India's security, particularly in context of, the places you have worked. How will it impact Kashmir? There's a lot of radicalization when and it's documented, coastal Karnataka and coastal Kerala. How is it going to affect us, a sort of a renegade ISIS faction, which doesn't even, listen to Taliban and organizes a blast in Kabul airport, the heart of Afghanistan?
Well, as you already said, there were reports of people who were radicalized by the ISIS on the internet. Some of them went there, some of them were frustrated and came back also. There are two things here which I'd like to point out. You see, Kashmir during the earlier period of Taliban, 96 to 2001, there was a surge in militancy figures in 96, in which I think 2,800 terrorists were killed. Thereafter, the figures went low. And in 99, after Kargil, we saw the infiltration by the foreign militants. And do you know that in 2001, almost 2,000 terrorists were killed in Kashmir? And they were from Yemen, they were from, Afghanistan and various other places. Now, are we going to have a scenario like this? First, as CDS Rawat said, our counterinsurgent grid is pretty strong. Of course, we'll get to know when the infiltration figures come after the snow as to how many of them have entered.
But do you expect it to go up?
I have a feeling that it is going to be difficult right now because, when you have standoff weapons, when you have things like drones, when one drone can deliver one big weapon and other small weapons, why would anyone try to risk? The other thing is that the internal recruitment is on. Today you have around 1,500 militants and around 5,000 overground workers. To add to that and to take the risk from Pakistan's soil, I'm not so sure. Basically, Taliban has given hints very clearly they're not interested in Kashmir. But of course, the Pak elements, the ISI, they can sponsor it through the JEM and their cohorts. And that is why, to keep it like last time, they were giving them training in the Khost province. So this time again, JEM has a base there. It is possible. And why would they stop at it? They would like to do it. But I think we are pretty strong. But one thing, Karthik, I must mention, I was in Kashmir some time back. And I think we should look at Kashmir becoming more robust, not only through the prism of security. There are a lot of things to be done in Kashmir. The tourist arrival there has enthused the locals. There is money coming in. We need to have more and more tourists, better administration. That is how we are going to have a strong Kashmir. There are so many things else. I would even say that AFSAPA should be withdrawn from certain areas. There should be more and more reliance on internal security, on the CRPF and the state police rather than the army. So these are things we'll have to look into very, very seriously. And we must be totally prepared, despite the fact that I feel there won't be much impact in Kashmir.
Tell me one thing, what does it mean for Indian diplomacy, when we say that, we have a call back our diplomats, what does it mean? It's like shutting down the post. You have no listening post in Afghanistan, you end up with nothing.
Yeah, well, let's say that this is in keeping with at least the international community or committee of at least 16 nations who have said that they will not recognize a marauding, terrorist force which just comes and by brute power seizes, the capital. So in that respect, I think India has also given the right message. Mind you, Taliban recognizes only muscle and power, whereas India invested in people over there. And I think that was the right move. So if India has taken that stand that we will not recognize you unless there are, other issues to be looked into, whether it's a women emancipation, art, culture, science, schools, education, etc., etc. In that respect, I would say this is a good move. And also, we didn't have an option. Mind you, from a country where we have to move Holy Guru Granth Sahib, we have to remove the last Hindu minority and, and the Sikhs.
Should India engage with Taliban? Is that a possibility, or India should wait and watch, as the ME has been saying?
Karthikeya, I feel that much of the analysis by our experts suffers from the desirability bias. You know what? People are saying that Taliban might change. I don't know. Why should Taliban change? Taliban today, with the help of one country, a nuclear state, Pakistan, has beaten almost everyone. They have thrown out United States of America, a superpower. None of the countries could do anything. United Nations Security Council is important. So why should Taliban change its ways? But there are two streams in Taliban. First is that generation which was there in 96, 2001, which has now become more mature. This is 2 decades hence. And second is the younger generation. And that is why you see two different kind of languages being spoken. The first is speaking in the international language of, amnesties and diplomatic missions not being affected and women being allowed. And the second level, you see, after giving amnesty, the police officer who surrendered was brutally killed. Now the lady governor has been captured. Let us see what happens to her fate. In rural areas, the girls have been asked not to go to schools. Women have been told not to report to offices. So, there are two levels. But the ultimate point is that if they are saying that the freedom to the women would be given as per the Sharia.
Tell me one thing, which is the generation which is talking the international language, and which is the generation which is like actually going in for brutal execution?
I think the international language is being spoken by the mature generation, which has seen the fighting 96 to 2001, and they have seen how the Taliban ran with the tail between their legs in 2001. So coming 2 decades back, they realized that if again something like this happens, the NATO forces will again come for a combined bombing and plaster the whole place. And it's the younger generation which is trying to, talk about the Islamic Emirate, talk about a theocratic state, talk about, imposing the tough laws of the Sharia.
So are you saying that there are two strains in the Taliban, but it's not Taliban 2.0?
Yes, there are two streams of Taliban. And much of it, it will be a kind of deja vu after a while. And mind you, again, my last point is that if a Taliban, like the medieval era, can just blast through whole of Afghanistan with the whole world watching, why should they stop at it? And they have already announced.
A very important point. Purely from the domestic perspective, do you think that this explosion of Taliban in Afghanistan has the capacity to reignite very fundamentalist forces in India? Fire their imagination?
There are fringe elements in this country who will definitely be attracted with this kind of a incident. And we have to, but mind you, I am a little heartened by the fact that not many in youth were attracted to the ISIS propaganda. There were few named ones, and it was pretty much in control. I think in that respect, we should be proud of it. And but the dangers are there, and we have to be very, very careful.
So thank you very much for making time for TV9 show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.